successful and effective in the yesteryears of Boone County.
You're right. He was. These were really top flight people. I mean, and thank goodness we had them there. Okay, I'm donating this, a good paleontological investigation of Big Bone, and this is really good. And it shows this was done after the Frank Whitmore and Bertrand Schultz. They were from the University of Nebraska, and Whitmore, U.S. Geological Survey, but they give the terraces and where the bones were found and everything. This is the first truly professional study of Big Bone was done when they did that. And
there were some fumbles that should not have occurred that we weren't responsible for,
yeah.
Bruce or I. The University of Nebraska got in there, and that was a bad thing. We won't dwell on it.
Well, the only bad thing is it all went back to Nebraska.
Well, that's bad.
But they did not, and you never will find an articulated mastodon, right, Todd? I mean, you know, but you know that too. And people kind of think, oh, you're going to go down there and dig up a mastodon. I mean, Jefferson and Goforth, and those guys 150, 200 years ago were able to, when they were still laying on the ground. Now it's been flooded, trampled on, cattle have been raised, tobacco's been raised on it. You aren't going to find it anymore. And so when they took off with a whole bunch of bones, I didn't feel like they took a whole lot.
If they took any, they took more than they should.
Well, they were the only ones that had the know-how to go and do it.
Well, we didn't have the know-how to stop them from doing it.
Well, we couldn't even stop the airport from taking Boone County, you know, when in those days.
That's where all the Republicans came.
Here's a good topo map of Big Bone and the river. This is easy enough to acquire.
That's a nice one.
Yes, that's a good one. And in here, it even mentioned about, I showed you that picture of the sycamore stump. And that's even mentioned in one of these articles too, of that. Oh, just as a little bit of interesting background, way back in the old days, 1957. That's before hardly any of you people in this room were born in 1957. That's when Gil Kingsbury from WW, he really was he was
executive. He was a real.
He was a big man in WW. Invited me over to be part of the program, and at that time, Kincaid Lake and Boone County were both fighting for state endorsement and state money to build a park. So he invited Charlie Conrad, I guess it was, from there.
Not Boone County, Charlie.
No. It was
Pendleton County.
Pendleton County.
Yeah.
And these were the questions that was scripted until I had to answer ad lib. Hell, you didn't have the answers for me or any of those. We all had to answer ad lib, such as in Kentucky, you heard he's reading this over the newspaper before television. Although, I guess they did have television in 57. Were we on television in 1957? I don't know. I guess we did. And he said there's to establish 2 parks in the area. And he said one such park will be established in Boone County. It's famous Big Bone Springs, 30-minute drive from the heart of the city. The other is in the making in Pendleton County, a 45-minute drive from Cincinnati, be located on the watershed of Cave Creek. And really, we were working together with the people that were trying to establish Kincaid Park. We figured we better not fight each other. Let's try to work together, and maybe we can get the state to do them both. The question kind of arose, where can the most of the money be raised locally? And because the state, they were always saying they hadn't any money, and we'd have to kick in. And so that Kincaid wanted $45,000, and to start Big Bone, we needed 30. So that's all it took to get Big Bone going. Well, we were able to do that, and we got it going. But they also were able to get Kincaid going. And if you've seen, some of the history on that, it's about the same. Now, I don't know if we go to those questions you asked that you wanted Asa and I to answer. Okay, here it is. Okay, let's look at this. The influence of Ellis Crawford and William Fitzgerald. Tremendous influence. I mean, without William Fitzgerald, I was struggling, newly married with a pregnant wife who was always pregnant. 5 times she was always pregnant. And starving to make a living on the farm. But Fitzgerald and his wife, wonderful wife Ann, retired school teacher, and he didn't have to do that. And Ellis Crawford. Ellis Crawford and my mother and father double dated together when they were both single. So Ellis was an established older person. Okay, what did they know about the significance of Big Bone? They knew a lot. How did they know what areas of Big Bone region should be made into a park? They didn't know much more than we did. We were all feeling our way. We just figured, let's start with the Sulphur Springs and try to locate the shaky ground from your childhood experience and go from there.
We just knew ought to be a park there.
Yeah.
Pure and simple.
How did these men influence the park and put their energy? Well, they were great. The town of Big Bone, where was it? It wasn't a town. I don't even think you'd call it a village.
What are you talking about? It was a town. All you needed was a store and some houses around it.
It had no post office.
It had 2 stores.
No post office.
Well, how about that? Well,
The 2 stores were saloons.
They had 2 stores. They had Miller and J.D. Moore.
Yeah.
And the saloon. The saloon's always a benefit,
That's right.
you know.
And a church.
Yeah.
Which I never did. Was it active? When's the last time Big Bone Church was active?
In the 50s, I think.
Okay. Did Todd? When do you figure?
There were when it was last majorly active, there was some services through to 85. But the last time that I know it was utilized was 2005 for an Easter service.
And tell the world and me too. Who owns the church now?
The park.
The park. They at one time questioned the Union Masonic Lodge. Did the Masonic Lodge have an interest in the building, right?
Yes.
And who did they buy it from?
There were 2 deeds on it. There's a deed on the upstairs and a deed on the...
So the lodge meant upstairs, I guess. Huh?
That was a nightmare.
Oh, boy. But thank God the state took that nightmare off our hands. Okay. But the state does own it, correct? And did you, Friends of Big Bone, fix it up? Who worked on that?
We worked on, our Friends of Big Bone worked on getting the leases and or the title on those.
Okay.
And then it was given to the park. And from then, I don't know, nobody's done any work because there's never been any funding, except for a grant from CG&E gave us a grant for the exterior work and painting and fix the roof. And then the park did something.
Yeah, the Friends of Big Bone kind of pushed that restoration, found some money from CG&E at the time, but the park actually did the work on it.
Yeah, their park.
And there was one guy, I can't remember his name, he was from down at Carter Caves. He actually took all the shutters back to Carter Cave, and out of all the shutters that were in the cellar, he managed to get enough for the one side so that the most visible side of the church had its original shutters on it. The rest of them were pretty much trashed.
Slope shutters, didn't they? I mean, did they go to a pinnacle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he had to replace the sill log in the front where all the water came off the road.
Okay, I'm glad you saved the church, and that's,
And real recently, Toyota came out and sent some volunteers to help us clean out the inside as well.
great.
That was nice.
I wouldn't want it to fall the way of the old Florence Town Hall did. Boy, they tore it down so fast.
Been about
Wow.
2 days.
Gee, God, they got rid of, John Earl Lloyd
I know.
Schoolhouse, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, and the first town hall, and it's for everything there. Well, okay, that's what happens if somebody doesn't give attention. They'll disappear fast, just like Dinsmore Cottage, Winfield Cottage, down Winfield Cottage in East Bend. And when you mention the power plant, they've got a guilty conscience after they
I hope
tore
they
that
keep
down.
it.
This stuff happens all the time. When I was a little boy, I keep saying that, we're not talking about Civil War here. Where the Dairy Delight is in Walton, a very popular spot, just reopened. When I was a little boy, there was a log cabin there, and it was a big one. I don't mean it was big, long and wide so much, but as I recall, it was almost 2 stories. And it was the Houston cabin, and if you move down the line enough, that's where Houston Road got its name. And when Kenny Dixon bought the property, of course, Kenny Dixon's a nice guy, but he didn't have any understanding or sense of feeling about history. So he tore it down and it was hauled away.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Oh, the log buildings in Burlington, right over here. That was a fine log building on Rogers Lane. I mean, yeah.
Where Kentucky Motors was a
Yeah,
two-story.
yeah. Burlington was full of log buildings. I mean,
Yeah.
and they're all gone. Now let's see. Okay, was there any other questions on here? And I brought some other stuff about newspaper clippings, but that. Okay. What was the most significant find you made in the Big Bone area? When you were talking about giving out school kids, we gave a prize of who to get a trip to the zoo. But I used to walk down the creek, take my shoes off, and feel for bones, and it was so easy to get broken up massive bones. And I used to give the kids broken up massive bones. They're broken up. I mean, there's nothing else you could do with them. But you used to be able to find them, and maybe you still could. I probably could at the creek.
Is Janine here? I don't know.
Yeah, Janine Kindly.
I know I've talked to her on the phone. I'd like to meet her, and I may have met her. But she was quoted in the article about the Fort Ancient people in the paper not long ago, this month. And she talked about the Fort Ancient people, among other things, subsisted on mussels. And Bruce and I and good friends, other good friends that had similar interests, walked the county. And I mean, we really did. Tremendous experience. We could devote a whole session like this to the things we saw and did walking the county. I-275 was stakes in the ground. There wasn't any excavation, et cetera, et cetera. Anyhow, we were going on the Beaver Verona Road, which is now called Hartman Road, which stops at Mud Lick Creek, but it didn't always. It came out at the top of the hill on what we always call Houston Road, or Houston Hill. We're going up through there. Bruce is talking